XXFM.
This is Access Houston on 97.9 The Box.
Good Sunday morning. You're listening to Access Houston. I'm your host, KG Smooth, welcoming inside the studio for the very first time. She's a first-timer. She is the founder of Women Cultivating Greatness. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the lovely Kim Mason. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, you are so very welcome. Happy belated birthday. I understand that you celebrated a birthday. So
yes.
Happy birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And so, tell us about Women Cultivating Greatness. What is it that your organization does, the mission behind it, or the inspiration?
Okay, the mission and inspiration is to help women, adult women who have dyslexia, ADD, or ADHD. Our mission is to provide economic and educational, emotional support to women who have learning challenges or learn differently. I don't like saying learning disabilities, and just to offer education, resources, and support to help them live to their full potential.
Yeah.
And this is based on the fact because I am dyslexic and have ADD.
Mm-hmm. So for those who may not be familiar, I remember the talk about dyslexia. I'm a man of a certain age, and so I just remember that episode of The Cosby Show.
That's right.
When Theo it came out that Theo was dyslexic, had dyslexia. So can you explain to one who may not be familiar with dyslexia or ADHD? Is that what
and ADD.
ADD.
Yeah.
So what is dyslexia?
Yeah, dyslexia is just the way our brain processes information, which may cause a problem or a slowing of, reading, writing, even communicating and speaking. But like other things, not everyone has the same type of dyslexia.
So there's like everything, there's a spectrum.
Yes, it is. That's right. And so that's what it is. And I just decided to really want to help people who have issues like that. Because during a period of time, they did not start testing for dyslexia or anything like that until 1980. Wow. So by that time, I was already in the 10th grade, and I had spent many years struggling through school, always being one grade behind, in science, maybe 2 grades behind. So that's what that's what we're trying to do. And kids are pretty resourceful because I first noticed problems probably in the 3rd grade. And I came up with my own mnemonics, my own way of learning things that helped me. And so now we're hoping to teach these type of skills to adults who have gone their whole life not knowing that they were dyslexic or ADD or ADHD.
Wow. So how would one be able to tell, to your point, how would one know?
Well, it's probably something that you've felt your whole life, but really didn't have something to say, this is what it is. But you said how would people be able to tell? They would have to be tested. Okay. And it's an extensive testing through a educational diagnostician. They would do the testing, and we have someone who will do that testing for us.
That's amazing. You're listening to Access Houston. We're talking to Kim Mason, the founder of Women Cultivating Greatness. You just celebrated 10 years. You had your Divas Day, 10-year celebration.
Yes.
Tell us about that, and congratulations on 10 years.
Thank you. Divas Day is just close to my heart. I started it in 2007 just as a way to get people together, my friends. You know how you always always say, well, let's get together,
Right.
but we don't because we
Right.
don't have time.
Right.
And it started in my home with 15 people and 15 women. And then the next day, several of the women called back and said, I really enjoyed it, sitting around talking, doing certain things. And when are you going to do it again? And so the next year, it was 33 women in my house.
Wow.
And so we moved it from my
She's got a big house.
we moved it from my house to the subdivision clubhouse, and then we've been in Hilton Garden Inn for 5 years now.
Wow.
But so I kind of took that event and made it a fundraiser for Women Cultivating Greatness, because I've had my nonprofit since 2015, but Divas Day has been around a whole lot longer than that.
Wow, that is amazing. The growth of your Divas Day celebration.
Yes.
I'm floored.
Thank you.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was 115 women there last year.
Wow.
And then this year, 115 women.
So what do you feel that it is that makes it so special for all of these women to come out to just have a night amongst each other?
Yeah. I think it's the empowerment and the education and the elevation, the 3 E's.
Yeah.
Because we have amazing speakers. We have and just amazing speakers all the time that talk about things that are important to women.
Yeah.
And so Divas Day has always had subjects that would interest women.
That's nice. So let's get back to the dyslexia and ADD. Can you explain ADD and what does that stand for?
It's attention deficit disorder, and what it is an inability to focus. Like, for example, when I go to church, I always sit in the front row. Or the second row, because when I walk in from the back, my mind is, oh, there's Angela. I need to speak with her. Oh, I wonder if I put the dishes in the dishwasher. Oh, I need to tell my husband this. And I'm getting all of these things going into my head at one time. And so it also stops you from being able to focus. That's why a lot of people who have dyslexia and ADD may not read very well and may shy away from reading. I know that I definitely do. Yeah.
Well, I can't tell anything. I would have never known nothing if you wouldn't have said nothing.
That's but it's and I think that for the most part I communicate pretty well, but some people can't at all, and won't speak in front of other people.
So I know that I'm sure that there's plenty who suffer from both dyslexia and
20%.
20%.
20% of the population does, and it runs in families.
So this is something that's genetic.
Yes, it can be. Yes. So part of the program that we're going to have at Women Cultivating Greatness beginning in January is the I Am Great in Spite Of program.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a class on learning styles, memorization techniques, effective communication, wellness, self-care. And this cohort that, people are already calling me and asking me if they could be a part of it. The cohort is going to go through these classes. We're going to measure what they're doing before and then what they're doing after to make sure that the classes help them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. You have to definitely come back on the program to remind everybody about that.
I will.
Absolutely. Listen, I've never heard of an organization like yours. And I get a lot of folks in the city on this program. And yours is the first of its kind, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And so I love what you're doing. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it was a long time coming because I found out that I was dyslexic when I was 30. So I was an adult attending classes at the University of Houston. And a quick story, the lady that was sitting next to me said, "Are you dyslexic?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I'm looking at the way you're holding your pencil, the way you're trying to read the paper, and the way you're writing." And she said, "Are you dyslexic?" And I said, "Well, what is that? I don't know what that is." I said, "I do know that I've had challenges in school." And so she directed me to go get tested because most colleges have a learning disability center.
Oh.
I went and got tested and found out that I have a memory deficit and that I was indeed dyslexic and ADD. And I was so excited. I went back to class because I wanted to tell Amanda that it was true that I was.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Cosby episode, right?
Yeah.
And one class went by, she wasn't there. Second class went by, she wasn't there. And so I went to the instructor and asked him, I'm looking for Amanda. He told me that there was never an Amanda enrolled in that class. And I said, well, she was here and she was with me and she sat right next to me. I never saw her again, KG.
Wow.
She changed my life. I believe that was an angel. That's my thought.
Yeah.
But she changed my life forever because I finally had something to say that it wasn't my fault.
Right.
Because I would call myself dumb. I can't do anything. And I just found out so much more. Like 40% of the millionaires are dyslexic and ADD, such as Whoopi Goldberg has come out about being ADD and dyslexic, and many other actors and business people. And it's just a different way to think. Our right brain is larger than the left. So very creative and things like that.
Wow. Well, you have helped so many people. I mean, I applaud you. I'm sure people who are listening who are going through this or know people who I'm sure you've made them feel a lot more better about their condition and knowing that they are not alone.
Right. I sure
Where
hope
can
so.
people, especially the women, get more information on Women Cultivating Greatness?
Okay, well, we have a website, womencultivatinggreatness.com.
Okay. Easy
Our
enough.
Divas Day website is divasday.org. And I'm Kim Mason. And so I can also be found on social media, primarily Facebook and Instagram.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The lovely Kim Mason, founder of Women Cultivating Greatness. This was amazing, and thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Good Sunday morning. You're listening to Access Houston. I'm your host, KG Smooth, welcoming on the program. First time on the program, surprisingly so. He is the CEO of the Houston Museum of African American Culture. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Guest is on the program. Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to be here.
So, tell the folks about HMAAC and its history here in Houston. We get so many people that move into this city by the week.
Right.
And they're exploring and discovering. So talk about HMAAC and its history.
So HMAAC, we're in our 20th year. I was called in 10 years ago. Well, first of all, we were founded by Mayor Lee Brown, our first black mayor. And I always like to give him credit for that because Lee Brown did a lot of things for the larger community that he doesn't get credit for. But I always want to be sure that he gets credit because people don't. On his last term, he said, you know what, we need an African-American archival library at the Gregory School, which is part of the library system, and we need an African-American Museum of Culture, which was privately funded.
Nice.
So we started off there. 10 years in, I get a call from some people that said, we haven't kind of gotten where we want to go. We need somebody to come in and make this thing happen. That included getting a building. that included animating the place, getting staff. And I was called because my background is, at the time, is finance, but it's strategy and message. And I know a lot of people around the country, and had a vision in mind of what this building and this organization would be. And first of all, it would be community-based. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to tell you something, funny part of this. So I get in there, and the first thing I say to my board is, look, since I get to call these shots, you're asking me, first thing I want to do is be sure that we know that this is going to be a professional museum. It is not going to be a community organization, because we really need professional museums. Mm-hmm. Go down, wander down the road, maybe about 4 years later, 5 years later, we tell people right now we are a museum in a building and in the community. Nice. There is no way that you're going to be a professional museum with the issues that our community has and not venture in to impact them.
Indeed.
So along the way to that, we did not become a history museum. We're not American history through an African American lens. I got to call that we're not. We are a multicultural conversation on race geared towards a common future. Just moving that step forward and forcing people into that conversation. That has not been easy in Houston.
Right.
But we've been very successful in having those difficult conversations. So we have had the conversations on why did the Barack Obama presidency improve the lives of African Americans in community meetings. We've had the conversation, why did 53% of white women vote for Donald Trump? We have those. We've had a community meeting on is Black women's empowerment the future of the Black community? So we have those. We've got one coming up about the civil rights movement and what didn't happen there that we're still living with. So we'll have those conversations that make everyone a little bit uncomfortable, but people are comfortable with.
Well, I subscribe to the philosophy that change is uncomfortable.
Definitely.
In order to make change, you have to get uncomfortable. And as you were speaking, the question forward in my head, why is it hard to have these conversations?
Well, first of all, I mean, when you start off, Houston is one of the toughest cities in the country. And, I'm going counter to, and I've consistently gone counter through with white papers, etc., counter to the public relations of Houston, which is we're a diverse city. Mm-hmm. We've got Black people. We're the diverse city. We go into places where there are 2 Black people and everybody's saying we're the diverse city. The reality is we're the 4th most economically segregated city in the world. We are statistically diverse, but economically we're the 4th most economically segregated, which means that if you're a person of color, you have no money. The second thing is that where philanthropy is concerned here, Houston's known as a big philanthropic city, but when we did the study on philanthropy here, and this was backed up by Latinx study, we found that less than 2%. Less than 1% of foundation dollars, here major foundation dollars, go to cultural organizations of color. The whole appeal of Black assets is an issue here. And why is it difficult? Because everybody thinks there's no racism here. Because we're the most diverse, and that's a very proud badge.
Tell that to our brothers and sisters up on the north side.
Well, that's why it's a difficult conversation. I've gone to places where people have said, oh, here comes trouble, because I'm not letting that go. Yeah. Partially, one of the biggest problems we have that speaks to our situation here is Houston, HMAAC is the only African-American museum in the country that does not have public funding for its building and annual operations as a public good. Mm. And no one here, the powers that be, seem to think that's a problem. And our folks think that we must, because we're surviving and we're doing quite well. Right. But the fact of the matter is Los Angeles gets $3 million annually for their museum, their African-American museum. Baltimore gets $2 million annually from state funds and or city funds for their museum. Philadelphia gets $800,000 for their museum. Wow. We get
zero.
Now, having said that, there are two champions really that I have to say exist. Lee Brown, because he founded this thing and said, we need to do this. Go back and take a look and see most situations where a person of color takes over the larger entity and see what did they leave for the black community. Lee Brown's one of the few people that did that. And I have to constantly make a point of saying that over and over because we should know that and revere him for that.
Indeed.
The second thing is our current mayor, Sylvester Turner. Now, we have some, the politics of what he does and the politics of what I have to do sometimes bump heads. But I like to say that when the mayor was in segregation, the mayor gave us, the only person who gave us an earmark, a $500,000 earmark. If we had had other people doing that, we'd be in a totally different place. Why is it difficult? Because that branding of our diversity is so important. It permeates people saying this is a great place to be. It permeates us being out of town and talking to people in the cab and saying, what about Houston? We said, oh, it's a great place. Houston's a great place if you're an exception. It's not a great place for most people. And if you're an exception, you can get into the life of the best dressed and go into the galas, and I do all of that. But you'll miss the point of the fact that in black life, for most people, just to go to the airport takes a lot of calculations. Is Susie going to be ready? What do we do with that? And we don't just get in a car, get in the Uber, and get there. So that life and that economic segregation is the point that we like to attack. And so as a result, we couldn't be a professional museum by itself.
Right.
We had to go out. We have message murals on Johnson Funeral Home on These Lives Matter. We have message murals on a medical building in Sunnyside that says, be at your best. If you go into Wheatley High School, you will see a mural that says, those kids see every day that says, the world needs what you have to give.
Yes, indeed. And from what I understand from the deities and Zulu tribemen and kings and all of that in the different countries over in Africa, they have said that the black American is the best that this planet has to offer because we come from descendants of slaves who survived that treacherous travel from the banks of Africa, South Africa, over here, and all of the islands in the Caribbean here.
Absolutely.
I always tell people, like, it don't matter, it don't matter where the boat dropped us off. We all came from the same place.
Well, that's right. And
then they said that we are the best that the world has to offer because we came from those descendants.
Well, one of the things that we have to remind people, we do Africa, we do Latin America and our Latinx in our building as well. We do people of color. We're a museum. We do everybody, but on any given day, you're going to go in there and you will always see an African-American artist or an African artist. Someone will be of color there, but black in there, but everybody else because we're a museum.
Oh,
But we're an African people. We're an African people.
I wish I had more time because I really want to dig into this. So I have to have you back. But before we run out of time, you all currently have a new exhibit at HMAAC, the Spirit of the Confederacy. Can you talk about that?
That's right. Well, we not only adding to I have to say that we're the most visited African-American cultural asset in the city in 10 years. We'll do 40,000 people. That's bigger than, that's where people come. Yeah. And so we're bringing some things, that difficult conversation. We were very fortunate working with this mayor to be able to get a Confederate monument. Now, the key to this monument is not just any monument. Mm-hmm. This is a monument that we want to resonate nationally. So it's not a monument of a particular person, General Stonewall Jackson. Mm-hmm. It is the spirit of the Confederacy that speaks to people of color all over the country. And so we are not having this Confederate monument sitting by itself. Coming to HMAAC, we do what we do. We are putting it into a conversation. And every 3 months, an artist will intervene and have a different conversation. we start off our conversation clearing up an oversight.
Mm-hmm.
And that oversight is the first conversation that this monument has, the spirit has in Houston, is with Jack Yates. And one of the things we're doing is commissioning a statue of Jack Yates. How in the world do you talk about Houston and not talk about Jack Yates?
Yeah.
How do you talk about all of the great people in Houston who have existed here, the Joneses, the you name them, and not talk about Jack Yates? And we haven't honored him. So the first thing we're going to do, just an incredible person, we're going to put a statue up of Jack Yates.
Nice.
And that's the first conversation that, who's the first person that you want to talk to that spirit of why we are suppressed? Jack Yates.
That is amazing. And how long will the exhibit be going on over there?
This will be an ongoing, that spirit, when we get the actual spirit moved over, it will be there forever.
Okay.
We will constantly be having a conversation because it allows us to have what we don't have in Houston, which is a conversation on race.
Yes. And so many things.
Not
I'm
diversity,
so
race.
No, I'm with you on that because now is definitely the time. We'll talk off air.
Okay, but we
invite
people in. This is a multicultural conversation on race. We're inviting people in to do that.
Mr. Guest, please promise me that you will come back on here. I have so much more to ask, to talk about, to dig into your mind. I just wish I had the time this segment.
Well, I wish I still had the young limbs to do those dance moves that I saw you throw down with. They were definitely smooth.
Well, thank you so much. Oh man, Mr. John Guest Jr., CEO of the Houston Museum of African American Culture. Please go by and check out the Spirit of the Confederacy, which is going to be ongoing, and we're going to talk more. I want to have this talk about race. I want to actually do a roundtable about race and Houston and everything that you had just mentioned. This is just fascinating. So thank you so much for coming on.
I got you.
And thank you for listening to Access Houston.
We'll be back with more Access Houston on 97.9 The Box.